coming 3 days, there will be over 50 talks, forums, and mastercasts live streams online, as well as broadcast every night on View TV6 at 8 p.m. So we've gathered the top creative and industry experts from all across the world to exchange ideas and thoughts with each other and with you. So first, just a discourse on what is next for design now, near and far. Please welcome our moderator, Dr. Edmund Lee, the Executive Director of Hong Kong Design Centre.
Hello and welcome to BODW 2020. We want to thank all of you joining us from across the globe this week. We have an exciting lineup of speakers talking about creative leadership and design creates impact. As we all know, in a world shrouded by uncertainty, ambiguity, complexity, and volatility, Vision 20/21 is about finding clarity. It's quite clear that we need alternative mindset and creative leadership to help reimagine and discover new possibilities and redesign how we can live meaningfully, work productively, and enjoy lives fully. Now, in this session, you will get to learn the power of empathy and collaborative creativity in solving problems and how human-centered design can transform businesses and turn creativity into meaningful informations and experiences. Before I bring in the plenary speaker, Tim Brown, online from California, to our Hong Kong studio, let me invite Sarah Mui and Patrick Bruce to join me in the studio. Sarah. Please. Now, Sarah is a catalytic architect, and the design brings collaborative creations that are grounded in human design thinking to connect people to the space and the community and strengthen the social fabric. From the Kai Yi Play Station and in Kowloon Bay to the intergenerational play space in Tuen Mun, Siu Hei Court, and the first girls' priority sports ground in Tseung Kwan O, all showing innovative public space design in the city. It's pretty cool, Sarah. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Edmund.
Okay. Now let me bring in Patrick Bruce. Hello, Patrick.
Hi, Edmund.
Patrick is the founding partner of OVO Partnerships, and trained as a product designer, he has rich experiences in managing projects that draw design, urbanism, and architecture together. Some of the prominent projects in China include Guijiang Creative Cultural Center in Xi'an, Sino-Ocean Taikoo in Chengdu, and projects locally, such as in the Blue House and PMQ. Thank you very much for joining us, Patrick.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Right. Let's invite Tim Brown to the studio. Tim, how are you?
Hello there. It's great to be with you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much. You know, I understand that you're calling in from California.
That's correct. I'm in Sonoma, California, just a little north of San Francisco.
Right. Now, Tim is the executive chair of the design and innovative firm IDEO, and the world's foremost champion of design thinking, and author of the book Change by Design, recently revised and reprinted last year. By fusing design with business and social studies, design thinking enables a top-down rethink of the value-driven delivery of business strategies, products, and services, from startups, high-tech firms to conglomerates, hospitals, schools, and governments. Now, Tim, you're probably aware that we have very strong policy support in the city, and design thinking has been widely promoted, particularly over the past few years. And some of you might have already heard about it. and steadfast progress has been made to learn and progressively apply design thinking across all sectors. Yet, the challenges remain how to ground the design culture and embrace design as a competence for designers and non-designers. We probably can talk a little bit more, in our conversations later, shall we? Now, Tim, I understand that you are going to talk about what's next for design, now, near, and far. Shall I pass the stage to you now?
Thank you so much. So this is a question that I've been asking for most of my career. What's next for design? Designers have always been obsessed with the future. As this example of autonomous vehicles shows, it's because one of the design's roles is to imagine that future and make it real in the present. And yet these design visions of the future frequently miss the mark. Sometimes they've been yes, but often they send us off in the wrong direction or persuade us to sign up for versions of the future that have negative, unintended consequences. Nevertheless, they are enticing. I'm interested less in the what of design's future than I am in the who and the how. And I would like to share with you how I think design has changed and will change over the now, near, and far horizon. So let's start with where we are today. A reflection on the state of design. And of course, it's tremendously varied and has been getting more diverse all the time and will continue to do so. When I set out to write my book, Changed by Design, in 2009, I had two goals in mind. I was interested in how design thinking reaches beyond the hard skills of the professional designer and should be available to anyone who wishes to master its mindsets and methods. And how design thinking expands the canvas for design to address the challenges facing business and society. In 2009, I had no appreciation for how strongly these ideas would be taken up around the world. Over 1 million users have downloaded DesignKit, a comprehensive set of design thinking resources published by IDEO.org. And this is just one of many such resources that have been enthusiastically embraced by practitioners in business, government, and civic organizations. Business leaders and entrepreneurs have been enthusiastic about how design thinking helps them focus on their customers and lead their organizations more creatively. We've been honored to partner with Tsinghua University in offering an executive program in design thinking for CEOs and founders of companies across China. And just as who designs has expanded, so has what gets designed. This video shows the outcome from a comprehensive program to design every aspect of a new school system in Peru.
Tú no puedes vivir en un país en el cual tienes al 5% de la población que tiene acceso a una educación de calidad y el resto no. Tuve que viajar a las escuelas rurales en el Perú. No tenían los servicios mínimos básicos. Y me convencí de que este país no es sostenible en el largo plazo si no se hace algo radical en el tema educativo.
We realized that this country has been growing for the last 25 years at incredible rates, about 5%, and we're making tremendous progress. But then we also realized that if you look at just basic measurements of how education is moving forward, we've been dead last in the PISA ranking for the same period. Obviously, we're not going to have a bright future unless we correct that.
So a few years, Carlos Rodriguez Pastor gave us a call, and he said, I'm looking to transform my country by designing a new education system. Part of the brief was to make sure that these schools would be international quality, that they would be affordable for the emerging middle class, and they would be scalable to disrupt the country's education system. Part of our design process was to make sure that we understood the people that we were designing for so that we could design a model that was right for them. What we learned was that students really wish to have their imaginations engaged.
From the design of the building to the use of how the curriculum is structured, to how the students interact during the day, they rethought everything from the ground up.
Todo colegio tradicional, el profesor llega a clases, te dicta y tú copias. Acá no, acá el profesor llega a clases, te explica más a fondo y aprendes.
Over the past 6 years, Innova has grown to 41 schools serving 33,000 students. They're on track to have 70 schools by 2020. Student academic performance has been impressive. In reading, national measures have shown that 88% of Innova's students are on grade level, compared to 61% in other private schools. In math, 61% are on grade level versus the national average of 25%.
Innova Schools is pretty special right now, but 5 years out, I think it'll be even better. As anything that you start from scratch, you learn things, you improve them, and you improve them, and you improve them. And I think that's what's going on right now.
You're going to have many other people hopefully replicate the model of Innova. So Innova's impact won't just be the direct impact on its own students, but on the meta-level impact on students everywhere.
I envision a few years from now, Innova, let's say in a country like Colombia or in Ecuador, in some middle-class family, having a discussion of where to send their kids to school. And the mother says, hey, what about that school where the Peruvians are teaching? Imagine that, from being dead last to being now the teachers of our region.
So I think it's fair to say that design has been on a journey of broadening its application and impact. And that's exciting. But what next? How's design changing in the near term? My single word answer to that question is hope. I see design bringing hope in a moment where we're seeing unprecedented disruption. My friends David and Tom Kelly describe how creative confidence is at the heart of all design. It consists of our natural ability to have new ideas, combined with the confidence to act on them. What has become apparent to me in 2020 is that creative confidence and the design that it fuels can help us face unexpected disruptions. Soon after the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in March this year, Design Vanguard, an organization I helped found, set out to capture and record as many early design responses to the crisis as possible. Over 170 projects have been recorded to date, covering personal protective equipment, safety guidelines and campaigns, physical and social distancing. And what I've observed and personally experienced is that organizations that had existing design capacity were able to respond very quickly and help explore immediate solutions to pressing problems. These helped bridge the gap until science could create longer-term solutions through vaccines. I think this is very hopeful. It shows that investing in design makes society more resilient to unexpected shocks. Similarly, I see design being applied to not only solve immediate problems, but also to help tackle the root causes of bigger issues. In the US, the pandemic has shown how vulnerable many in society are to the disease because the state of basic health is poor. First Mile Health is a program to design interventions into everyday life that can help improve the overall state of health in communities, another form of resilience. When I look further out, I see design playing an important role in how we reinvent many of our systems to make them fit for purpose. But for that, design needs to make its own transformations. We need a transformation in one of our core mindsets that came from professional design's birth in the Industrial Revolution. When we think of what we design as a machine, we can imagine being able to control every aspect of it. And then, when we have finished, it will operate perfectly, just as we intended. But the truth is, much of what we're being asked to design today is too complex. Designing from a viewpoint of natural systems means we appreciate that we can never fully understand the complexity of the system, that it must evolve over time, and that design is never done. We must also rethink who is designing. While design has done much to spread, design thinking has done much to spread design and make it available to many more people, it still assumes that the design is done by a relatively small group on behalf of users or consumers. I think this has to change, especially when we're designing complex systems or experiences around health, education, or financial services. We will find ways to design with communities of users or design platforms that communities can adapt to meet their particular needs. Lastly, we will transform how we produce the things we design. The legacy of the Industrial Revolution has left us with an approach to material use and manufacturing that is linear and wasteful. We extract materials, using them to make products, and then, for the most part, discard them after a short life. We are slowly moving towards more circular approaches to design and manufacturing. And this does not just apply to physical products, but also to the way we produce our food. Urban and indoor farming is helping to create local food production that reduces waste. But we need even more radical and circular approaches to food production and consumption. This final video illustrates how changing our mindset to be one based on natural systems, changing who designs to be more collaborative, and innovating around how we produce can lead to ideas that are truly fit for the 21st century.
Why are we here and what are we doing? That has been a journey throughout the days where every now and then you ask yourself that question.
It has been an extraordinary week. We have all of these extraordinary member companies that are here really looking at how we can be re-envisioning the food system and applying circular principles to a regenerative future.
We're here to take a very audacious but also very intangible concept of circular economy. We're trying to take that to the next level and actually make it much more tangible and concrete.
Circularity is so closely linked with innovation, and it's innovation that's the path forward for us as we face really daunting challenges in every aspect of our economy.
The huge light bulb was the build something, build a prototype. It generates so much more positive feedback than just an idea which generally gets crushed or naysayed.
Traditionally, talking is so much easier. It's easier to sit around the table, and we found ourselves doing that at several points. And so breaking out of that and actually starting to build was kind of a revelatory moment for all of us.
The experience has been really intense and really energizing, and I think really eye-opening, and it sounds a bit like a cliche maybe to say that, but I think that the fact that so many of us spend a lot of our time thinking through these systemic problems, but we do so in our own companies or in our own organizations, and I think the beauty of this is that we're coming together with different companies, different participants, different skill sets to together co-create basically a solution. I think there are very few and special opportunities that you can have to do that.
And so that's what's really most exciting for me, is to be able to work with, potential competitors in this space, and instead of competitors, it's peers. And that shift has really been kind of foundational for me.
So in summary, design is a continuing journey. It provides resilience to the individuals, organizations, and societies that put it to best use. Its impact in the future will depend on our ability to transform. And the shape of that transformation needs to be a continuing conversation. So let's have that conversation. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much, Tim, for your sharing. Talking about your book, Changed by Design, I read it, almost like 11 years ago before I joined Design Center. And in fact, honestly, for the many people who are curious or would like to learn more about design, or using design thinking as a creative problem-solving tool, is a must-read book. So I understand that you have actually...
That's kind of you to say.
Yes. Sorry. So I understand that you have edited it recently. So what have you added in, to enrich this content, just in case the audience here may not have time, to read it yet?
Well, I wrote a new introduction, really reflecting on what we'd learned over the last 10 years and some of the things that I actually touched on in the last few minutes. How we're seeing the broadening of who are using design thinking tools and the broadening of the kinds of challenges that we're working on. And then I wrote an extra chapter to put at the end and really looked at a number of different more detailed issues, I think, that have emerged over the last 10 years. For instance, the growth of new technologies like AI and machine learning, and how they're changing the responsibilities we have as designers to think about data as a medium, not just software or physical products. I also speak a little bit about how we've learned a lot about what it means to master the skills of design thinking. That unfortunately, it's not a concept that you can walk into a classroom and learn in a simple lesson and then take away and apply. It's like any human skill, like playing a musical instrument or being a great surgeon. It takes continual practice to master, and we talk a little bit about how that is important to remember when we wish to use design thinking in the kinds of problems that we're tackling.
Right. So Patrick, Sarah, you have anything, comments? Or?
Yes, Tim, first of all, just to thank you very much for what is actually a very insightful and frankly thought-provoking presentation that you've just done for us. On a personal note, I have to say I'm terribly disappointed because you've now put immense pressure on the next two speakers to try and follow what you've just done. It was pretty awesome. Thank you for that. I am particularly interested, and we'll pick up a bit on this in what I have to say next, in the one of your key themes that I take away from your discussion, and that is that, if I can paraphrase you, it's less about the what of design and much more about the who and the how of design. To paraphrase that slightly differently, it's less about the object that comes out of the design process and more about how we put an integrated team together from the grassroots right up to the top to evolve products, systems, environments that are beneficial to society at large. And the how we do that, as you pointed out, is the major challenge for the future. Yes, I think that last point is the one that's going to exercise our minds for a good long time into the future.
Yeah, in fact, I think, Tim, very interestingly, I think both Patrick and Sarah has pretty much read your minds to some extent, because Sarah is actually talking a bit more later on, about the design for the resilience and agility. Okay, but before I get on, to Sarah, on that part, perhaps, Patrick, you also touch on something that, Tim alluded to, which is, the evolving scene, that we need to integrate and collaborate. So why don't I give the stage to you for your sharing?
Thank you. What I would like to do today, as I've just mentioned, actually, I will pick up on one of Tim's themes in this. But I would talk under the headings of integrate, cooperate, and collaborate. Now, my own company, again referring back to one of Tim's comments, is a firm of planners, architects, and designers. I'm not going to talk about what my own company does. And the reason I'm not going to talk about that is that we are still enmeshed with the current traditional way of delivering projects. We are doing design for the community, by and large. We are not doing design with the community. And this is a problem. It's a structural problem within the industry, and it is going to take a while to resolve that. But in the meantime, there are 3 other initiatives which we're deeply involved in that I would like to just touch on today, and I hope might help reinforce some of the points that Tim has had to make. The first one is an organization called Integer, hence the integrate in the title. And essentially, it is about researching sustainable materials and sustainable ways of doing things in the architectural realm. The second one is an organization called Very Hong Kong. It's very specific to Hong Kong, but doesn't have to be. And this is very much a grassroots public engagement organization, which is involved in the organization, management, and design of public events, which are free to access to anybody who wishes to access them around Hong Kong. Fully engaging local people's concerns and interests from the get-go. So they're involved in the design of it, the management, and the organization of it. And the last one is an initiative called Collaborate Hong Kong, which works a little bit more at the architectural and environmental level. And yes, you guessed it, it's all about engagement with the local population to determine what can be done on sites that at the moment around our city are neglected or in furlough in some way, and certainly not ready to come onto the market. How can we utilize these sites for the benefit of society at large?
Patrick, would you like you to operate? You can operate this.
Yep. So into just some examples of what this is all about. Integer has been doing quite a lot of work in bamboo research, and you will be pleased to know that this particular little building is entirely, structurally, entirely created from bamboo, from reconstituted bamboo. This is something which we've been pushing quite hard for quite a long time. The opportunity to produce this building came about as a result of the 2008 earthquake in Sichuan, where the little village of Cifeng was absolutely devastated. We put together a group of people who basically brought together their skills, their capabilities, their materials, and their opinions, engaging the local population around Cifeng, engaging the local government around Cifeng, working very closely with the China Children's and Teenagers Fund, a charity based in Beijing, and KPMG as the key partners involved in delivering this project. And basically working towards the development of this material, as you can see, as structural use. Ultimately, handing the project over to the local population, who are now actively managing this, curating the activities that go on with it, and it has become a vital community center within the Cifeng area. So a tiny little building which has become a hub of the village by fully engaging all stakeholders in the design process and the construction process through to completion. The next one is the Swire Community Center, which has just completed actually about a year or so ago. Again, it is an earthquake project, but in this case it's in a little village called Shuanghong in Pengzhou City. And it's the continuation of the bamboo story, just in a different setting and with different requirements. But again, this could only have been achieved by the active engagement of a very wide range of people in the design process. Design was not left to the professionals. Design is too important to be left to the professionals. We need to engage the people who ultimately are going to be using, managing, and maintaining these buildings into the future. And this is an example of exactly that. Here we have an image of the construction taking place. You'll see a small steel structure underneath, which creates the safe, earthquake-proof structural frame for activities to take place inside, and then above it the bamboo structure, which in the end is providing an environmentally friendly manner of natural ventilation and natural cooling throughout the hot summer months. And this particular image again shows the village itself having taken possession and ownership of this and gearing up to run it well into the future. Very Hong Kong. Very Hong Kong, again, is an initiative here which is looking at how we can bring creativity onto the streets of Hong Kong. Interestingly enough, all the way around Hong Kong, there are little pockets of creativity going on that nobody in this city knows anything about. Nobody in the world knows anything about. These are people that are getting together in little groups to pursue their interests in painting or sculpture or making cupcakes or experimenting with the creation of fashion. And all of this is hidden away. This initiative basically brings it out onto the street by engaging entirely with local entities, with local, there we go, yes, with local social groups, with local interest groups. And, sorry, I've gone one too far there. By likewise engaging with governments, government departments. None of this can happen without the active participation of government. So, for example, this particular image is in an old industrial area of Hong Kong. It's in Kwun Tong, and it's an area under a flyover, a highway flyover. We managed to negotiate successfully with the transport departments, with police departments, with those concerned with public safety, with fire departments, etc., in order to have permission to use this site as a festival location over the duration of an entire weekend. And it was quite extraordinary. Through that outreach into the local population and involving them in the design of this event, this had countless thousands of visitors coming through over that one weekend period. So this became a rolling program. We've done the same thing in other areas, a different demographic in this particular area in the south part of Wan Chai, perhaps a more affluent area. But again, the same engagement and the same enthusiastic reception being involved in the design and the planning of it. Something is not quite functioning. There we go. Not very far from that spot was, I'm not sure it was an iconic building, perhaps not. This was the Wan Chai Star Ferry Terminal. And this was an event that took place with the help of the owners that allowed us to utilize this space while it was still a functioning ferry terminal. But it was only a matter of weeks before this building was going to become part of Hong Kong's history. It was removed in order to make way for further development in that area. So again, encouraging people at the grassroots levels to come out and display their creativity as individual performers, artists, etc., but also to be involved in the organization and management of all of these facilities. And the last one for this particular section is the very, very big response that we got to a similar event in an area in Hong Kong, a township in Hong Kong called Aberdeen, an old fishing location, a fishing port location in Hong Kong, population of about 65,000, 70,000 people. And this was the response that we got when we engaged with local people doing wonderful creative things and wanting a platform to present it. So engagement is really fundamental to the entire process. The last element that I'd like to talk about is Collaborate Hong Kong. And this is a very short section. Collaborate Hong Kong is, again, perhaps a bit more architectural in its approach. And it seeks to find disused areas of land and revitalize those and bring them back to life in the short term and hopefully even in the long term. Again, engagement with local people to establish and identify these redundant sites or dilapidated sites, then immediate consultation with government and bring them into the process to ensure that we have the best possibility of, in this particular image's case, the possibility of setting up a rather interesting experimental organic farm out in the new territories. And here you see the enjoyment of, this is a mixed group of people, frankly, a very mixed group of people. We have a panoply here of professionals who are volunteering their time in order to make this happen, to support the effort. And mixed with them, a very large number of local participants who are enthusiastically embracing the possibility of turning this particular town, this particular area of the town, Tin Soi Wai, in Hong Kong, into their home, rather than into a dormitory that they go to sleep in at night. So basically, I hope that what we've been doing through these three organizations is to sow some small seeds which will allow the growth of participation, the growth of creativity, more widespread creativity beyond the professionals themselves, and the integration of professionals and end users into the future. I hope that these little seeds are part of what Tim has defined as the FAR. At this point, I will hand the mic back to.
Okay. Thank you very much, Patrick. I guess we can pick up a couple of points later on in our conversation. For example, you mentioned about let the community take the ownership. Let's do more participatory design. And you also mentioned about that it's going to take quite some time before that mindset or industry practices actually get changed. Okay, so certainly together with Tim, we can extend that into our conversation later. Now, Sarah, you talked about your design, and you've done a lot of public space design projects. Okay, so reacting to this Vision 20/21 and resilience. So, how about you start sharing your 10 minutes?
So thank you,
with
Edmund.
us. Yeah.
And hello, everyone. I feel very fortunate to be here today, but I think I should be the most nervous one because Patrick is actually my teacher, and I started learning design thinking from Tim's book. And Edmund's always share a lot of insights about how we could design a better city. So picking on what Patrick and Tim have shared, and from today's topic on what's next for design, now, near and far, I'll try to pick to a pair of works. And I need to clarify that I didn't match my slides. I didn't watch Tim's slides before, but I think accidentally some of the keywords, they are the same.
I only said read his mind, so
yes, because from his book. Yeah, so the two works that I've picked are agility and resilience. And I found that especially in 2020, all the unexpectedness that we have been through has reminded us agility and resilience is not only for our city, but also for our people. So maybe like as what Patrick has just mentioned, how we can practice being designers to enable our citizens and people to build up their agility and resilience. So I've picked 3 projects, not all done by us, but something that gave me hope in 2020. So the first project actually echoes Tim's first topic in stage 1 called understanding. As designers, we always think we understand people, but through understanding, maybe the next step is empowerment. Especially in Hong Kong, in a lot of Asian cities, we are encountering double aging. We are having degenerating districts or public space. But instead of just a top-down approach, can we actually do people-led regeneration? So this project is actually called Space Hive from the UK. So founded by Chris Golay, this project amazed me by its first headline. You can look at the hashtag, and it's called Build Back Better. When I first looked at this project, I was so amazed. Oh, he's so right, because our city is built, our roads are built, our communities is built, but it doesn't mean we cannot build back better locally. So as a crowdfunding platform, it matches funds and local people to build and visualize the local projects or community projects. So all the projects, they tell us what the real needs of the people. And over 5 years, they have delivered more than 300 projects locally in UK, across the UK. And it worked with a lot of funds, both corporate and in terms of governance. Because when we talk about public space, we do need to work with governance so that we can realize it properly. But this empowerment builds community resilience naturally. So through the projects, everyone believes that we, being a part of the citizen or part of the city, we can make our local area better. So throughout 2020, I would say I watch this platform more than I read newspaper, because every time when I scroll over the project pages, you start to realize what's the latest need of the people. Though we are from different countries, but it's amazing to see how people start to think about rescue cat, how to think about what's about music, how can we implement music even during pandemic. So this actually helps us to start to think how, as designers, we do not design this project, but we activate them, how we can actually enable them so that people feel empowered. And I think that's one of the sustainable way to achieve resilience of our city. And the second project is about hope. Because in COVID, a lot of people lost their hope. And even we are not sure about what the future is, so we do not know what we should do near or far. But we found that under agility and resilience, the most vulnerable party are actually the very established organizations. Because this organization, they lost their flexibility, their agility. But there's one program I found is so amazing. And it is called the Hardship Fund by Red Cross. And I call it Agile Transformation. We understand Red Cross being a very established NGO who has been doing cash assistance to emergency cases or for people in need for a very long time. So they used to have cash, e-coupons or e-vouchers for people to do their shopping or to purchase their services when they're in need. But in pandemic, it's different. People are scared of using banknote. We don't want to touch the notes because there's studies saying that maybe that will spread virus. So in the UK, over 50% of people are deciding not to use cash anymore. So how this cash assistance could work? But no matter how established the system works, they found this hardship fund, which is adapted so quickly, only for less than 6 months, and they paired up with payable banknote. So they paired up with online system and do this COVID hardship fund. So no cash, don't worry about anything that's physical. But what they do is to send you a bank card. So in this time of pandemic, we understand e-shopping or even how we minimize physical touch will be important. So as designers, even designers in an organization, we should think or we should use our agility or resilience to build something that fits the latest need. So this I would say 10 steps is a diagram that show how the hardship fund works. So easy, super fast, very user-friendly. When you can't see the people in need, how you can understand their emotions, how you can actually know what they need, and how you can encourage to use their service. So this design actually helped to design a system that you don't need to see the people, but you receive the card being topped up by the operator, and in 4 weeks, it will be expired. So you may need to apply again if you're in need. So I found that this project actually showed me how hope can be cultivated through designing system or through redesigning an established structure. And lastly, when we talk about designing for a planet, from green building or green architecture to what I would say green daily habits. So the third project is a project that we just completed together with a local branding consultant, co-design, and led by Environmental Protection Department. And I found this project was teaching me what we could do as designer in environmental catalyst. Because in Hong Kong, I think we have quite good in terms of green awareness. However, if we want to push green habits into daily life or into the community, we need a different design. And this environmental catalyst is a very typical, it's actually, it's a typology that we have in our city for a long time. It's just the community recycling center. Community recycling center usually locates in, I think, over 10 districts in Hong Kong. So it should be the place where people could go there daily to drop their bottles, to bring their metal cans there. However, the majority of people or the majority of citizens, they didn't recognize it. They didn't really go there, and some of them didn't know about it as well. So Environmental Protection Department, they took a really brave step to redesign how public could perceive a community recycling center. So instead of a dark space for people, which not too approachable, this is how it's look now. Okay, so this one is going to be a bright space, very simple design, but aligned image as a whole for the project. So it's called the recycling store. Asians, especially Hong Kong people, will get used to going to a convenience store and grab whatever you have. But why? We can't make green convenient. So for this one, we work from branding with the operators, with the people who use them. And we want to encourage people to forget their old image of what recycling is and just make recycling being their daily habit. When this shop opens in the Hong Kong Island, I call it the shop now, and it attracted 300 visitors to go to this store one day. on the first day of it. So it actually encourages kids, families, and new people who were afraid to go to the old community recycling center to start their new habit. And I think these 3 projects reminded us collaboration is something that we have. But I do feel optimistic because if we are, as designers and as all the stakeholders, if we are willing to come together and collaborate, I'm sure we're going to achieve something better and achieve a greener city so that we can have green station at your doorstep. So I think that's what I would like to share and respond now.
Right, thank you very much. Now, in the interest of time, now Tim, let's bring Tim back, to the studio. I think let's turn this into a challenge. We have about 5 minutes plus. Let's do a synthesis round here, shall we, Tim? Now you talk about we can talk a lot about how we nurture future designers, but let's talk about the future of design for impact. Okay, remember the conversation we had a bit and what is it about the shifting from single authorship, to more participatory design? Can you elaborate a little bit more? And then, Patrick and Sarah can then maybe help to synthesize and finish off, the message.
So I think I would say that the 2 ways that these approaches obviously change the impact. One is that by engaging and enabling communities to participate in design, they also participate in the new behaviors that those design systems are creating. Whether it's visiting a recycling shop, or it's being part of a community in a town and developing its own kind of creative identity in the way we heard about before. So I think that means that we're more likely to meet our goals in terms of designing systems that are embraced and by the people who are using those systems. The second thing I think is we're seeing the power, to be honest, of if you like grassroots and emergent innovation, that we see all of these different solutions. I think our next step is how do we share them effectively so that others can beg, borrow, and steal them and apply them in their own instances. I think this idea, I've been involved in many projects recently where we've done a lot of crowdsourcing of concepts, and it can be very powerful. And so I think there's 2 ways that we can get impact. One is engagement of the community leads to greater engagement with new design, and then this emergent grassroots approach, if we can figure out how to scale it and share it, we can have it applied much more broadly, I think.
Okay. Now, Sarah, let's try, to maybe have some soundbite from you, and we probably can integrate, some of the questions into it. Now, we always talk about design. Design thinking is about, doing meaningful things. But, we have questions coming in, actually, very interestingly. Most of the time, we are very difficult to get attention, from the people on the subject matter. But at the same time, it's so complex. We don't have enough time. We don't have enough budget. What do we do? So in your experience working on collective participatory design, what's your answer to that?
I think budget is always the first questions. No, always the last questions, but the most important one that people ask. And I think what design thinking helps me through all this project is we always talk about prototypes. And prototypes is actually about quick wins or quick falls, so that people can actually start some changes through less budget, but then we could see the result, we could evaluate, and then we could keep improve. So I think there's something that we could start thinking about or start to change or transform, is that a project, it doesn't mean start and end, but what are the different stages in between? I think that will make this empowerment even more powerful.
Okay. Now, and interestingly, there's a non-stop rolling of questions actually on the screen, but in the interest of time, let's gel together some of the questions, that, we actually receive. Now, Patrick, you talk about that it's going to take quite a while, to change the industry mindset and practice. And it's not just designed by the designers, okay? It's for the community. Now, we have questions, actually quite a few of them, asking similar things. How can we possibly integrate across so many different disciplines. You have architects, designers, city planners, and then you have the community people, and then you have the legislators. It's almost like an ecosystem of infinity there. So what could we do, to facilitate that? And I like, the team, to maybe round it off, by assimilating some ideas, here.
Well, I think first of all, this is your summary is actually very interesting because it actually is an expansion of Tim's final point about the FAR and the nature of our thinking having to be based on natural systems rather than mechanical ones. So that it is not just a question of changing the mindset of the design community. By design community, I mean the entirety of that community: the engineers, the structural guys, the mechanical and electrical guys, and all of that community is going to have to change over time. It won't change on its own. And I think that one of the key drivers in this, and it reflects somewhat on one of the earlier questions that I spotted on the screen, one of the key drivers is to overcome this question of, is this going to add cost to the whole process? Well, I think there are two sides to that equation. In fact, in a curious way, there are three. The first one, I believe, is that as people, as the general public become more and more aware and more concerned about things like our current circumstances, the virus, about pollution, about waste, about outages around the world, etc., there is going to emerge a certain kind of demand. There's going to be a demand side pull to force us to do better. The other point I'd just like to make is I think the one group, the one community that we haven't talked about is the financial community. And the financial community is putting increasing pressure on us to deliver better and more responsibly.
Okay.
ECG movement is enormous. So impact investing is going to force our arms.
Now, Tim, we have a few more minutes here. So maybe in 1 minute or two, can you just quickly synthesize, to respond to that?
Well, I think my simplest synthesis would be that since its very beginnings, design has been on a journey of change. As we've learned how to design differently, as we've created new disciplines, as we've faced new challenges, as we went from the early Industrial Revolution to the rise of mass manufacturing, to the rise of mass consumption, to the information age, and now here we are facing new kinds of problems. We're creating new approaches, including new people, and it's just a continuation, I think, of that journey of design that's been going on for 150 years. I think it's one of the beauties of design is that as a creative activity, we are constantly evolving our practice. We are constantly adapting. We are looking for new and better ways to do what we do. We're not interested in being stuck in the same approaches. And so I just see we're just at another point in that journey. Perhaps the problems are more challenging than they've ever been. Perhaps the scale of what we're trying to do is greater than it's ever been. But I just see it as a continuing journey, which personally I find extremely exciting, very inspiring, and something that will keep all of us busy for a long time to come.
Okay. Now, Tim, thank you very much. In fact, it's very much, our honor here because Tim is actually awarded the DFA Lifetime Achievement Award, this year. By Design Center. So this is really an honor and for an organization who's been promoting design thinking, to be talking with you and really, listen to your insights. Thank you very much, for joining us in the studio today. Now, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. So hope, this session, give you some food for thought on the strategic importance of creative leadership and how design can lead to meaningful people-centered innovation. Thank you very much for your viewing and participation.